Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Vanda, founder of the Period Makeover Solution and Fertility Maximizer. And in this episode today, I'm going to be doing a mini client case study. Going to be sharing about a big win that we have had. I think sometimes, when you hear that I work with fertility clients, everyone thinks that the biggest win that we get is the positive pregnancy test. And while that may be true, we get a lot of other smaller wins along the way while we're on this journey. And even myself, sometimes we forget to celebrate these. And I want to make a point to start sharing some of those more regularly as they come up with my clients so that you guys get to hear about them, you get to celebrate with us, and you also kind of have a more tangible idea maybe of how this process looks for various different clients. Every client that comes to me has a different background, has a different reproductive history, and therefore their journey with me and what all we accomplish together while we're working together is different. So we're going to chat about a client today and their history and their story so far. Before we get into that, if you are looking for support on your own fertility journey, I would love to support you. There is always a link in the show notes where you can book a call with me where we could get on a quick Zoom and chat through your history, what you've got going on, what your concerns are, what your goals are, and see if I think my program could help you to get pregnant. If a call is not your style, that's totally fine. You can also DM me over on Instagram. I'm at Wellness with Vanda on Instagram, and you can find me there and we can chat about it. Okay, so for the purposes of this case study, I'm not sharing any client specific identifying information. So I am not sharing their name. As you guys can imagine, with fertility, especially when you're still right in the midst of it, um, it's very personal. It's a very private journey. And there are things that are happening in the midst of this journey that you're not ready to share with everyone just yet. And it's definitely not my place to share them either. So I will not be sharing any client name or, details that could help you identify them. So wanted to start by sharing kind of where this client was when she came to me, when we chatted and she decided, yeah, I'm going to work with her. So she and her partner had been not being careful for much of their relationship together, but had actually been putting some effort into trying to get pregnant for about 2 years, and they had not had any luck. This person knew that she had PCOS, which we now know as PMOS. Um, She'd done some medicated cycles with a fertility clinic, and they actually had also done two IUIs, and none of it had been successful. They had not got their positive pregnancy test, and just for various different like life reasons, they decided that they wanted to take a step back from the medicated cycles and doing another IUI and really try to figure out what was it with her hormones that they could do naturally that might help them to get pregnant naturally. So, you think about all those things, and you think about how expensive the medications, the IUIs, and then the side effects that those medications cause. It's a lot. It's a lot on your body. It's a lot on you mentally, emotionally, financially, all of it. And, I will have this every once in a while where a client will reach out to me, and we'll chat about, maybe working together, and they'll be like, I'm just like exhausted with the meds and the side effects and the cost of it, and it's not working anyway. And I feel so discouraged. And I know that there has to be something going on with my body that is not right, quote, not right. And I want to get to the bottom of it, even if it's not just for a pregnancy specifically, but just because I want my body to function the way it's supposed to. And that was kind of the case here. Now, I want to then take you through kind of like what we did right away for this client. So, just like all of my fertility maximizer clients, she got a fertility nutrition test, which is the HTMA test that you guys have heard me talk about in the past. If you don't know what that is, scroll back to episode 100, where I did a deep dive into explaining what that is and why I use it. And then she also got the hormone tracking for her full cycle. So this was really, I love to have this data on anyone that's trying to conceive, because we really need to see specifically what is your estrogen doing, what is your LH, FSH, and progesterone doing. And each hormone is important at various different points in the cycle because they have a different job at different points in the cycle. And so When you go to a traditional provider and you get lab work done, they're just drawing labs on that one day or maybe 2 days of your cycle, and you're just limited with the amount of information that you get. With this tracking that I do with my clients, we get to see it not every single day of your cycle, but almost every day of your cycle. And it's very, very insightful. We can also ensure that way that we're not missing anything. So with this client, we have now tracked the very end of her cycle that she was kind of like wrapping up and finishing when we first started working together. But from that data alone, it was about 5 to 6 days that I had her testing a few different times. And from that, we were able to see that her progesterone had risen enough in that second half of her cycle that we could confidently say she had ovulated that cycle. So the other thing about this, I mentioned early on, she has a history already known of PCOS and PMOS, and she knew that when she was not doing medicated cycles, that they were very irregular. And so, her cycles are very lengthy, lasting anywhere from like 40 to almost 50 days. That's a long time. And it's a lot of data to track. So after that first end of just, the few days of that cycle she was currently in when her hormone tracking device arrived, we tracked an entire cycle. It was 39 days long. And we did not get a clear LH peak on that cycle. Um, so I'm not saying that she didn't ovulate, but it was not like obvious between the lack of an LH, like a clear LH surge. And also, there was a rise in her progesterone, but it was very minimal, and we did not see it sustained for very many days. So, in that same time frame of when we're starting to track the second cycle, we also get her fertility nutrition test or the HTMA test back from the lab. And what we could see from that was that she had very low minerals across the board. So definitely had opportunities there to improve. We could see that her body in general was kind of struggling to function well, because with that nutrition assessment, that HTMA test, we get to look at the nervous system, how your body's handling stress, thyroid, adrenals, and blood sugar. And her levels, none of them were quite where we would want them to be. They were either high or low. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of exactly what those levels were, because then this podcast episode would be like an hour and a half long. But some of the big things that really stood out that we knew right away we needed to work on were that her body was tapped out. She had been under a lot of stress for a long period of time, and we really needed to focus on replenishing and nourishing her body. So we focused on making sure she was getting enough to eat, making sure that we could reduce any type of stressor that we could. So that doesn't mean like, oh, you just need to reduce your stress or you need to stress less. That's not helpful. Um, we looked at tangible things that we could do. This looked like making some changes in her like environment, things she was being exposed to. So we reduced some toxin exposure, which is a stress on the body. She had a history of sleep apnea, so that it wasn't being treated. So she went to a provider, got the necessary diagnostics needed for that, is working on fully getting that addressed. We also looked at the blood sugar swings that she was likely having throughout the day, because that is a stressor and a source of inflammation on the body. And then the inflammation it creates is a stressor on the body. So we had a lot of little things to work on. And then we also knew that all of these things were impacting her ability to ovulate, which is why her cycles were so long in the first place. Plus, we had this PCOS that we already knew about that was working against us as well. So we really had to focus in on how can we make sure that the body is nourished with enough in a way that supports blood sugar balance and in a way that helps bring down inflammation. And then we also filled some nutritional gaps that we identified on her test, like where she had really low levels of certain things. We tackled that with both some diet tweaks and supplementation. So then we were able to track her next cycle. And again, because her cycles are so long, it is the current cycle that we have our eyes on that we are so excited about because we've gotten this big win. So, cycle is going to end up being around 45-ish days, maybe even pushing into 50. But we're so excited because we did clearly see an LH surge for her on cycle day 32. We could tell that it was coming in the days leading up to that because we saw her FSH going up. We saw her LH starting to build up a little bit. That helped us to know, okay, this is fertile window time. We've got to time intercourse appropriately. And then now we are in the 2-week waiting period where we are observing what progesterone is doing because we want to see progesterone rise. And we're already seeing that rise occur. We're going to continue to watch that over the next week to 10 days. We want to see it go up and kind of hang steadily risen. We don't want to see it shoot up and then drop completely off. We want to see that sustained. And then, of course, when this 2-week waiting period comes to an end, we will either be watching for her period to come or she will be getting to take a pregnancy test and see if, her efforts to get pregnant during this cycle were successful. And this is all very exciting because, this client and I have worked together for, let's see, months wise, it would have been 3 going on 4 months. Now, again, since her cycles are the way that they are, we've tracked one full cycle. And then we are almost done tracking another one, and we got to track a snippet of another one. So it's 4 months of us working together, but 3 cycles that we've got to gather some data on. We had that fertility nutrition assessment that we got to get a lot of good information from. And the reason that I'm kind of sharing this timeline piece of things is because for someone that had the history that she had and also had the thing showing on her fertility nutrition assessment, the HTMA test that she did, I would expect for these wins to take about 3 months because you've probably heard me talk about before the fact that our egg health really starts 90 to 100 days before that egg is released for ovulation. So what's great about this and this cycle and finally being able to see this very clear LH peak is that we can see that what we're doing is working. The changes that she's making, she's been working so hard. And anybody that is trying to conceive, and especially if you're not getting positive pregnancy tests, it's taking a long time. You've been at this for a long time. It's a very disheartening journey. And it's great to have this data and to be able to see confidently that something that you're doing is actually working and it is helping you. So I hope that in a few weeks' time, I get to come back and record another episode and tell you guys that she's pregnant. That would be wonderful. That is, of course, the ultimate goal. But even if it's not, even if it didn't happen with this cycle, this is still really positive news because we can now see that her body can do this on its own without medication, without other interventions. We just have to keep moving forward and keep, making these positive changes that we've already done. She just has to keep consistent with it and give the body more time to respond to that. And what I would suspect will happen either is she'll be pregnant from this cycle, hopefully, fingers crossed. But if not, then we're going to see the length of her cycle also shorten because the more effort that we put into healthy ovulation means that ovulation is going to be able to happen sooner, which will then shorten the length of her cycle. And therefore, it will also give her more opportunities throughout this year to get pregnant because she will have more occurrences of a healthy ovulation. So I hope that it's helpful to kind of hear this case study broken down. Like I said in the beginning, I want to share more of these because yes, the pregnancy is the ultimate goal and is the biggest win that we are, working towards, but it's not the only thing that we are working towards, and it's not the only goal or the only milestone throughout this program and my time working with clients. If we don't ovulate, then we can't get pregnant. So being able to see that this ovulation has occurred for her is huge. And we're both just ecstatically excited about it. And I'm so glad that I got to share it with you guys today. Now, like I said in the beginning, if you are on your own fertility journey and you have been struggling to get pregnant, you've been trying for a couple months or more and you're not having any luck, then you're a great fit probably for my Fertility Maximizer program. We can absolutely chat about that, make sure that your unique situation is a good fit, because everybody, like I said, is coming from a different background with a different history, with a different reproductive history. But I would love to support you if you are a good fit and if we're a good fit to work together. I am getting ready right now to enroll clients for August. So if that is of interest for you and you want to be pregnant, by the end of 2026, now's the time to reach out and let's get to work on it so that we have time to optimize your egg health and optimize that ovulation. So you guys can hit that link in the show notes for the discovery call, or you can find me on Instagram and chat with me about it there. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week.